top hats and mutton shoes, erotic intense midnight cruise, Berlin gay society in 1903. Sigmund Freud's Vienna's hype identifies the homo type, the intermediate sex, and heterodoxy. The gay wave moves across the sea. Hello, there is liberty. Betty Boop is hot and hooches out in the cold. Greenwich Village, Bloomsbury, gays in high society. Harlem night, Chicago fights, Leopold and Loeb. Pride, gotta have pride. Better run too long to keep it inside. Pride, can't sit back and watch from the side. Pride is power and power is pride. It's time to celebrate all the colors of the rainbow. Get out into the streets, follow the tide.
Hello and welcome to Stonewall Portraits. I'm Christy Hardwick and I am guest hosting today because I am hosting the host. This is very exciting. So I'm here to interview Brian McNaught himself. I remember the first time that I met Brian, it was here in Provincetown, at a table sitting in the Red Inn having dinner. I had been told about him by so many people, and finally a very dear friend of mine, which is a friend of ours actually, Deb Daggett, said, you have to meet him, you have to meet him. So I went and interrupted his dinner, went over to his table, said, so you're Brian McNaught. And I had heard so much about him, so it was wonderful to meet him, and we've been friends for these past few years now, getting to know each other more and more, so this is a thrill to get to interview him. And when I was thinking about meeting him, I was thinking about all the things that he's done in this movement for lesbian, gay, and bisexual and transgender equality in the world. And I had to go look it up again because I couldn't remember all the things, so I went and studied a little bit more about Brian. So we're about to talk to someone who is interviewing many other people about what's happened since Stonewall and what's happened in the movement and their place in it and their own personal stories. And his story is something that will unfold as we speak, but when you think about the outcomes from the story, the 6 or more documentaries that he's part of or has produced or been in that help educate people about the issues of gay people throughout the United States. Also, the 6 books that have been used for textbooks in many different universities and colleges. I've read 2 of them, I can say. I can't say I've read all 6 of the textbooks, but I read 2. The Gay Issues in the Workplace is certainly something that was required reading for anybody who thought they were any kind of an HR person, which I thought that I was in my career. And also a Sex Camp, because it's required reading if you want to have a good time and learn something about yourself. So read both of those. He also has been a syndicated columnist for many, many, many years, and right now spends his time traveling the world and helping individuals, companies, groups, and institutions become more inclusive. And I think if I were to describe something, I know the New York Times said it the best, you know, the grandfather of gay sensitivity training, which this is the most gorgeous grandfather that I have ever seen.
Godfather. I'm the
Godfather.
Godfather.
Oh, the Godfather.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a big difference.
That's even...
The Godfather. So it's even bigger. The Godfather of gay sensitivity.
But I could be a
issues.
grandfather.
Okay. And I would say that he is someone who has done the most work and probably quietly but powerfully to bring more allies to the table to help us understand what's necessary to have a fully inclusive society. So I'm just thrilled to be here to interview Brian McNaught.
You're good. People are going to say, can she take over your program? She's so good.
I was watching you.
Yeah.
That's what you do. You give all this big thing. I was thinking, he knows everything about the person that he talks to.
Well,
so
I try
to
to become culturally competent before I do anything, which is find out about the person or the country. I mean, last year I went to India and Tokyo to do programs for Merrill Lynch and Goldman Sachs, and on gay issues. It was the first time in either country that they had a presentation on these issues in a workplace setting, and you have to do your homework. You have to find out what is it that will, as you say, building allies, what's the most effective means of reaching people without unintentionally stepping on cultural toes. So that was a great introduction. Thank you.
Thank you. You're very welcome. Easy to do.
Yeah.
Definitely easy to do. So we're going to hear about you. And I'm going to ask the questions
Okay.
that I'm
Oh,
interested in.
that's right. I don't get to do that.
Yeah. I get to ask the
Yeah.
questions that I'm interested in, and then we'll see if there's something else that you would like to make sure that we share.
Good.
So let's just look back, and I'm thinking about the kinds of books that you wrote, and some of them were very, functional, the idea of teaching people about something, but then you wrote the book that was called, Are You Two Brothers? So it was much more personal,
Right.
and thinking about your personal life. So And there are people who work at many levels in the movement, and yours is, I think, a unique way of contributing. But maybe we go back and say, how did that begin for you? What was your life like in terms of how you came out and how your presence as a gay man first started to be strong for you?
Great question. It started back in the early 1970s, where I was a weekly columnist for the Catholic newspaper of the Archdiocese of Detroit, middle child of 7 Irish Catholics, altar boy, patrol boy, Boy Scout, all of the things that your parents and class president, all the things they wanted you to be. Obviously, suppressing my sexual feelings, terrified. There were no role models. There were no programs like Glee on television. You know, gay people were interviewed like mafia hitmen behind a screen. But I started the Detroit chapter of Dignity after attempting suicide. I drank a bottle of turpentine, feeling, and took all the pills in the house. Well, it was a really important point in my life. You know, people talk about they're born again. Well, that's when I became born again, because I had reached the end of the life where I could be this fabulous fake. Mm-hmm. Everyone loved me, but no one knew who I was. I was involved in every civil rights struggle but my own. Mm-hmm. And feeling that there was no future for me, I would never be happy, and that I was only going to disappoint the people who loved me, and I wanted to die. And as I sat in the kitchen with the stomach full of turpentine, I started thinking about my folks and how devastated they would be. Drove myself to the local Catholic hospital and had my stomach pumped. And as I sat on that emergency room table, I promised myself that I was never again going to live my life based on people's images or expectations. So that was a real turning point for me. And then I wrote a column about being gay, not my own, but just how good it is to be gay in the paper, and the diocese went crazy. I mean, they were reading letters from every pulpit saying I was wrong. And then I came out, and as the founder of the Detroit chapter of Dignity, and I was an anomaly. No one knew what to do with me. The gay community didn't know what to do with me because, you know, I showed up to speak in a little blue blazer and tie and khakis. I wasn't in, you know, blue jeans, because I grew up in this family that taught you to dress up when you go out. And I was Catholic, and that was scary to people. And the straight community didn't know what to do with me because I didn't easily fit into any box. I didn't look like the pedophile that they imagined was hanging around children's playgrounds. And so that became my whole career, Christy. I mean, every class that I went to, and I started speaking at women's classes and studies in universities, and the gay papers started asking me, well, if you wrote a column for them, why don't you write a column? I was fired, ultimately, after a hunger fast. I was fired for being gay. And so I started writing but again, in the gay papers, I was somebody that the radicals had a hard time, and I felt I was radical, but they thought, who is this guy, and why is he trying to bridge differences rather than be part of the revolution?
So you didn't have that sense of militancy that some people have.
I've never never expressed anger. Mm-hmm. Anger scares people. Anger scares me. So I know if it scares me and my defenses go up, I've never used anger with a gay audience, and I've never used anger with a straight audience, because people's defenses go up. I believe, and as I know you do, that we're all on the same path, doing the best we can, regardless of our orientation, race, et cetera, et cetera. And that you have to help people come with you. That's what my books have always. I wrote a book called On Being Gay, which a lot of people. These books were used by colleges, but I never wrote them for colleges. Right. And so the book On Being Gay, which was a collection of my columns, for a lot of people, it spoke to them in a way no other book did, because I wasn't angry and I wasn't militant. I was just saying, this is my life. But I also wasn't accommodating. I didn't say, you know, lie to your parents or go home for Thanksgiving without your partner. I never would do that.
There's something you said earlier I want to go back to, though. You said many people loved me, but they didn't really know me.
And they often still don't.
Right. So then when you come out, then you're allowing people to know who you are and to love you at the same time.
But even
how was that?
Even when you come out, people project what they think they know on you. Sometimes a person will come out to their family, and their family projects, yes, but you're not like the others.
Right.
And sometimes, as happened with me, you come out And I've been on my own my whole life. 2 years I worked for the mayor of Boston as his liaison to the gay community, started an AIDS response effort, etc. But for most of the 37 years I've been on my own, doing colleges and corporate work now, writing my column, etc. And I think Ray is the only person who really knows me.
He's your husband.
He's my spouse of 35 years, and I am much more vulnerable than people know, take things much more personally than people are aware, but you can't show that because you're out there needing to be the face, and that's what we are. I say in this work, the messenger is the message. You know, they look at Christy and they look at Brian and they look at and they say, oh, well, that's not so scary.
Yeah, 37 years though. So what has kept you driving forward on this movement? Because the movement keeps changing. You now have young people in it that are activists again. I mean, they're back to the part about wanting to be angry, getting, you know, yelling at the administration, sending lots of letters,
right,
marches, those kind of things. So that element is still there, but yet you've continued in your way.
What you have to stay, I mean, when I first wrote my syndicated column, I remember using carbon paper, you know, with the old typewriter to send out copies. You know, now obviously you do it on the computer. I'm now on Twitter and Facebook and all the things, YouTube, that I need to be to stay up with it. But the message is the same. I mean, I was invited to speak to all the senior leaders of the National Security Agency. This is a big deal. They'd never had a gay person come in for a 2-hour presentation on gay and transgender issues with the military there. I never would have been invited in if I was a stone thrower, but we need the stone throwers to move people along, saying, all right, we got your attention, President Obama, now we need to move forward on this. But he's never going to be able to talk to them at a table because that group needs to be as unreasonable as they are, and they are unreasonable. And they insist upon being called queer. Well, I understand why they do, but that's not a word that I'll use in a corporate setting. Because
so different levels of the movement. So some people are trying to move things legislatively.
Right.
Some people are advocating for the social services and the equality in that area.
Right.
And then some people are thinking about the workplace and. You know,
well, my thing has always been about change of heart.
Okay.
My message has always been about ignorance is the parent of fear, and fear is the parent of hatred, and ignorance is our enemy. When people meet gay people, lesbian people, bisexual and transgender people, their attitudes change. It's the only way that we're going to have and are achieving a cultural shift. Legislation does not change culture, right? Social services don't change cultural attitudes. The only thing that changes cultural attitudes is education, and that's a slow process. One day, one person at a time.
Why don't you tell us about one person, one story, any kind of example of when someone had a transformation that you're aware of and understand?
Great stories. That's why, you know, you say, why do you, 37 years and it's changed, why do you stay with it? 2 days ago, I got a letter from a teenager from London who had her mom watch my YouTube. I have like 9 YouTube videos. And she had her mom watch my YouTube video where I asked the audience to imagine growing up straight in a gay household. And she said that her mom said at the end of it, I had no idea that you were going through this. I'm sorry. Well, that makes it all worthwhile. That's much more important than a paycheck to me. It always has been. I've given away a lot of my stuff because I say to people, you want to reprint my column? Take it. You want to take my exercises and do it? Take it. I don't care. Just get it out there. Early when I started doing this work in a corporation, and I was doing a third shift factory tour. This is me staying up 11:30 at night, working all night long with a group on gay issues in the factory. And a guy in the beginning of the workshop, when I asked, should somebody come out at work, he said, if somebody came out, I couldn't guarantee they wouldn't lose their hands in a machine. Well, that's very scary. And I knew there was a gay person present in the room. Everyone did, but no one knew, you know, would he come out, would he not come out? And he was skipping work a lot, which is why they brought me in to try to change the group. And at the end of this 8 hours of education, the guy who said that awful thing went up to the guy who everyone thought was gay and said, "Are you gay?" And the guy who was gay was so excited about the workshop, he said, "Yeah, I am." And the other guy said, "Well, I'm really sorry about all the stuff that I've said and done." At the NSA, the last story, at the NSA, I said to the audience, I want you to do two things. I want you to go back to your office and tell people that you were at a presentation today on gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender issues. Don't say GLBT. They think it's a sandwich. They have no idea what you're talking about. Say the words. Because when I came out to my mother and dad, I didn't say I'm a GLBT. I said I'm gay, right? We need to use the words or we'll lose them forever. So I said, go to your colleagues and say, I was at a presentation and say the words gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, and then I want you to go home and I want you to sit with your family and go around the room and say to them, so what was your day like today? And when it's your turn, say, well, guess what happened for me? I was at a presentation on gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender issues. And I got an email the next day from one of the senior people at the NSA who said, Brian, I did what you told me to do. He said, and 2 hours later, my college-age daughter came into the bedroom and said, Dad, I'm a lesbian. Wow. He said it never would have happened. He said, now, in my presentations also, I say to the audience, so what do you say if somebody tells you that they're gay or transgender? What's your response? Yeah. Because a lot of people don't know what to say. I say, you don't say, I never would have known, or no, you're not, who told you that? As somebody's mother said to them. You say, what? Thank you. Yes. Thank you for telling me, because you've honored me, you've picked me out as someone that you trust. Yes. So he said, I did what you said, Brian. I said, thank you to my daughter, and she came up and hugged me. He said, we have an intimacy now we never would have had.
A whole new relationship.
A whole new relationship if I had not had the education that was provided. And so that's why you keep doing it.
It's beautiful when I think about it, because I actually work with many different levels of this movement for lesbian, gay, and bisexual and transgender equality. And so people are at the level of the advocacy, and they're pushing, and they're doing the movements. It's all necessary, as you said, looking for legislation,
absolutely,
looking for social changes, looking for all those changes in the corporations, all those things. But it's almost like what you're talking about is after the movement has had some really big gains, like we already have with some movement with the Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And
right.
It looks like the Defense of Marriage Act may begin to fall away some. It looks like that could actually happen at some
right.
point. We could get that. Maybe even the Employment Non-Discrimination Act could happen. Let's say all those things happen. But at the end of the day, it's almost like a ticker tape parade. Everything gets done, and there's just this stuff left on the street, but there's still all this cleanup to do emotionally, all the emotional work, and people aren't necessarily prepared to live in a society yet that has the ENDA, that has DOMA no more, that has... Right, so the work is also...
Every major corporation that we both work with prohibits discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. They have gay and lesbian, bisexual, transgender employee resource groups. They give them budgets, right? But in the workplace, openly gay people rarely get asked, how was your weekend? Despite all the legislation that's passed,
cultural changes.
On a day-to-day basis, when the gay man walks into the restroom and it gets quiet, right? Or the transgender person walks into the restaurant and feels the tension, even though there's legislation. Right. Or you are afraid to put the picture of the person you love on your desk because you're afraid of people making comments or stealing it. What good is the legislation unless you have a change of heart and attitude? Right. And that will only come through education. And it's not just me giving talks, it's programs like Glee, where the person sits there and watches and gets involved in the person's life, right, and thinks, well, that could be my kid. I'd be all right with that, right? I wouldn't mind my kid having that person as a friend.
Sure.
But that's a slow... Well, it's like race, institutions, interracial marriages, people with disabilities. Absolutely. It's a slow process, and that's why, and we both do it. And we will not be remembered for it because I've never been head of an organization. I've never been invited to the White House because I've never been a head of an organization. We're both going to be footnotes in history if even mentioned, but the work that we're doing is so important of not just helping gay and lesbian, bisexual, transgender people feel okay about themselves. Not just okay, but listen, you're really happy being gay. You've been together 35 years. I really like that. I think maybe I can have that too. But in addition, helping their parents, brothers and sisters, grandparents say, oh wow, this is not something I have to endure. This is something I could celebrate.
Yes. And
Yeah.
so something about the idea that you've managed to keep the same message, for all these years is really important, I think. And there's something else that you're kind of famous for that has gotten into the vernacular of people who do inclusion work, and it was about the music and the words.
Right. Yeah, the big difference, and it's a great metaphor, and you have incredible music. And that's one of the things that attracts me to you. That most of us have had the experience of singing a song and forgetting the words, but we know the melody. So we understand that in any song there's music and there's words. And words are important, like I love you is important. But how you say it is your music, right? And so when we tell people to stand up to somebody who is making an inappropriate comment, do it with clarity and with confidence and with calm, right? Because if you just say, I don't like that, and turn away, the person thinks you're not very strong. Our music is what tells people, come to me, you're safe. You're going to be in my arms. Put that picture on the desk. I'll support you.
Yes.
Beyond the words that you say, corporations have music, we have music, everyone has music. And we need to be aware of what is our music on this issue. What's our music on transgender issues? A lot of gay and lesbian people have added the T to the GLB, but they don't have a clue what the T is about. And they could never explain it to anybody. And when they're around a transgender person, they get very uncomfortable.
Yes.
That's their music. Their words are fine, but their music isn't great.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it helped me a lot when I think about that, because on the transgender issue, I had to have education. And my education came through young people who had a little gender gumby, and they explained to me, so there's the birth gender, and then there's the gender you identify with, and there's the gender you're expressing.
That's right.
And then some people have different mixes of all those things, and the reminder, I think the big reminder was that we're all on a gender continuum. Whether you happen to be heterosexual or homosexual, you're on a gender continuum in terms of how
Absolutely.
you're expressing that identity. And I thought that was beautiful for them to help me so that I could talk about this in a way that I was part of it, not like it's something other than me.
And then, well, not only that you became aware of it and what they were saying, but you owned it in your own life. When we become comfortable ourselves by doing the homework of exploring our own gender identity, our own gender expression, then our message as the messenger, we become trustworthy. An audience looks at us and thinks, they've got it together. They're not nervous talking about this. They just said these words without, grimacing.
Yes.
Sexuality words. I mean, here I am talking to corporate executives about penises and vulvas, and
You wrote a book called Sex Camp, and they
Sex
invite
Camp,
you. Yes.
right? And, well, when I was growing up, you'd never say penis; it was pee-pee,
Yeah.
And like this is a point, right? How silly is that? So now we're saying those words, and once they see you say it with confidence, then they think, I can do that too, and it's not a dirty word, and it's just a biological term, and we need to talk about it in order to talk about transitioning with transsexuals.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. And in our society, especially in the United States, we have this sort of fascination with sexuality, but the repressiveness at the same time in our communities. So this idea you have of bringing it out and letting people be more comfortable
We're obsessed with it.
culturally, be better for us, because we're obsessed with it and repressed at the
And
same
we're
time. Right.
we're obsessed and we're terrified of
Yes,
it at the same time. It's almost insane. We can't get enough of it, but we can't talk about it comfortably. And so our what we're doing in our work, and have been, my whole life, is helping people get past the fear of the unknown. This is the word. This is what it looks like. Right? This is what I feel. These are my feelings. And that's very important, is that we talk about our feelings, because until we tell our stories, people don't know what this is about. Right?
Yeah, and I appreciate that so much about you. I've learned so much just being around you, because you have a gentleness and a peacefulness of the way of doing this, where I tend to also stay on that plane, but in my work. But as a person, I tend to be more fierce. I want people to just accept me. It's like, I'm with a woman, I love this woman, I married this woman. What's it to you?
Right.
And I know that doesn't necessarily allow people to feel like I'm approachable. So I've learned from you is to hold that a little more gently, have the fierceness and the pride in self in a way that is still accessible to people.
And
which
not
is not
scary.
easy to do.
We
Not easy
we
to
can't
do.
scare them. If they sense we have a chip on our shoulder, then they'll pull back. But when they see this incredible glow, which you have, people are going to say, I don't care she's woman, black, lesbian, I need part of this. This is good stuff. She's got it, and I want part of it.
And letting yourself be yourself and have that show through. And if you have the true self-love that you're trying to help people to see, whether they happen to be lesbian or gay or bisexual, transgender, or heterosexual, that self-love that you have, that can come through, and then people can be more accepting of you. So I think there's something in your work that says not only am I helping the allies to understand and be educated, but also asking of the community itself to learn to love yourself so that you can show up in a way that doesn't have anger attached to it.
Because an ally can't be your ally if they're afraid of you. They need to know that they're with you and that you're all safe together.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
Yeah.
They're with you and we're all safe together.
We're safe together. And when you come out to your folks, as I say to people, don't come out and with tears, because then it's a problem they have to solve. When you come out to people, come out with grace and say, I want to share something with you that's important to me. I'm gay.
So do your own work first.
Do your work first, and don't ask other people to solve it for you.
Come out to people where if you need to cry, if you need to, because you're afraid, and you have to work through that, work through it with
a support group,
group,
right? But before you tell the key people, like your parents, make sure that they hear it as a message of joy and not a fear.
Because they don't know what to do with it.
They don't know. They're going to take their cue from you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true in the workplace, in religion, everywhere. If your head is down and you say, I'm gay, then they know there's shame involved.
Yes.
If your head is up and you're smiling and you're calm and you're happy and you share who you are, then they have no problem to solve, but there's something about you they'd like to have more of.
Yes,
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
And it's all the difference in the world in terms of communicating with people and giving them the confidence to follow you up the hill, because it's a rocky hill we climb.
Right.
It's not easy, but if you look ahead and you see somebody's doing it safely, then you'll keep climbing and following them up.
There was something else that you said I wanted you to repeat for me so I can get that locked in, but you talked about the enemies and fear and friends and those, what was that?
The ignorance is the parent of fear. In almost all situations, we're afraid of what we don't understand. And that fear is the parent of hatred. That we hate sometimes what we're afraid of.
Got it.
And so if we want to stop it before it ever gets to hatred, like the Fred Phelps, outside of the funeral of a gay person or a military person, we need to reach those people earlier and say, so tell me what it is that is so frightening. Because you can have feelings about my morality and think I'm going to hell without hating me.
Yes.
And without trying to make my life hell on earth.
Beautiful.
You can do that. We can work together. I don't agree with your religious beliefs. You don't agree with the way I express my sexuality. But that doesn't mean we need to treat each other,
Beautiful.
as enemies.
So working on that ignorance works away that fear.
Absolutely.
Can work away that hatred, and there's an opportunity for a dialogue. So
Absolutely.
you are truly wonderful.
Oh, thanks. What a great
And
time.
I appreciate
I
what
love,
you're doing in the world.
thanks, and me you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Gotta have pride. Been around too long.